Hey everyone. Um, so I just wanted to talk a bit about some conspiracy theories that have cropped up in my life lately that I've seen with people, and I just I don't even know where to begin. Really, it starts with uh, me getting a shot at the VA for the flu in February, right? And running into people who say that they get sick after getting the flu shot. They get the flu from the flu shot. And some people saying that they are never going to get another flu shot ever again. And I try to explain, how if we don't all get the shot, then some people will be, carriers that just take it to all the sick and elderly and all the young, and we're going to have problems if we don't all get our immunizations. And it's just not working. The people that I'm running into have really strong feelings against immunizations, and they treat the VA giving me a free flu shot just for walking in. They just say, "Hey, have you had your flu shot? Here." You know, they pass those things out to everyone free. You know, so they think it's some sort of like conspiracy that they're uh, giving us other things that are hurting our bodies intentionally because they didn't take that Hippocratic oath. They took the serve the government conspiracy to run tests on veterans oath. Um, and then because I live in Colorado, I am getting a lot of Facebook chatter about the possibility that the Denver Broncos threw the Super Bowl because they got trounced 43-8, and a lot of people didn't believe that that was ever possible at all, ever. Um, and then going so far as to say not only did the Broncos throw it and get bought off, that another report where the Seahawks admitted to learning um, Peyton Manning's hand gestures in the early part of the game was actually just NFL propaganda in order to throw people off of the real conspiracy, which was the Broncos were bought off. Because it can't just be that your team that you rooted for all year lost, right? It has to be something grandiose. And then I was sent a video about the NFL rigging the Seahawks even being in the Super Bowl, and it was the NFL was rigged, and it was a video about the 49ers game in the championship game before that, before they got the Seahawks to the Super Bowl. And I watched the video, and yeah, there were some bad calls, right? But I've watched enough football as a Steelers fan to know that bad calls happen, and they happen almost in every game. And sometimes you get a lot of bad calls in the same game, and they all go one way. And or the majority of them do. And so I just didn't see how the details of this video. Some of them said like since 2000 they've been rigging it, and in the comments section the guy says we know of 6 games that were completely totally rigged. I'm like, if they're rigging it, then it's pretty much every game. Every game has some calls that uh, you would basically, you'd think that any lay person would have gotten that call right. Every game has these calls that are just bizarre, and you know, do they need more officials? There's plenty of them on the field. You know, it's just the way the game goes. Um, we as armchair quarterbacks critique their job, but they are there in real time. That's why they have instant replay and rules about how instant replay is used, because people are fallible. So the most troubling of all of the conspiracy theories that have jumped up in my feeds is actually an old friend of mine. Uh, he used to go by the name The Saints Revenge here on YouTube, but he lost that channel and he's back to his other channel. But it's he just started posting a whole bunch of um, basically chemtrail conspiracy theory videos, and I don't know if this is just to troll people, if he's going to come out and say, yeah, this was just a test to see how many of my atheist subscribers uh, were only skeptical in one area of their lives and not in the rest. I don't know. Um, so just because you are an atheist, right? It doesn't mean that you're the same type of atheist as other people. And I'm going to say, this is probably the only point that I have to make in this, other than I've been seeing a lot of conspiracy theories be put before me. Um, Here is my actual point. If you are an atheist who believes that vaccines are bad, that everything genetically modified in our food should be removed or labeled as such, um, if you think that uh, all of the 9/11 truther stuff is true, and if you think that chemtrails are being sprayed across the planet so that the HARP array can nuke the air in order to affect Agenda 21. Um, and so instead of allowing that to happen, we need to bury crystals in our backyard. If you are an atheist who believes all of that stuff, you're not the same type of atheist that I am. Okay? And I want, like, both atheists and Christians to realize this. There are other atheists that are so different from what I just described, that don't believe in all of that stuff, that I would say the difference is as vast as the difference between Jews and Mormons. Okay? Like, really, really different, right? They both believe in that Judeo-Christian God thing, right? But vastly different interpretations as to what that means, and a whole bunch of other baggage, in one of them. So, yeah, uh, I have one thing in common with all of those people that believe that might be um, in my camp on the atheist theist debate. But other than that one thing, I just feel like all of my feeds on social media right now are being filled with all of the reasons why I really feel alone sometimes. Maybe I just need some more flavor. I'm too vanilla. I need to come up with some reason that people can call me tarded by taking like the first few syllables of whatever it is that I'm talking about and add tard to the end, you know? Or maybe somebody will just invent vanilla tard. It kind of rolls off the tongue, right? Vanilla tard, Mountain Dew tard. I don't know, but I think the problem is maybe I'm not making a lot of positive assertions, and that's why I am, feeling so vastly different from these people because they're making some outlandish claims. You know, when they look at the chemtrails in the sky and they see this netted pattern and they say, "Oh, that's not air traffic. That's a pattern by which they're able to hold down air pressure things with nuking the air from base stations on the ground. Because HARP has clones of it, 20 clones of it. There's different things on the Earth that look just like HARP. You might not see them on Google Maps, from those satellites that go around the Earth without discriminating, because they'll show what's behind, the Forbidden City's walls in China, but they will not show a clone HARP array that's one of the HARP arrays that nukes the air, that brings drought to California, which is a punishment for them being politically against somebody somewhere. I I just got through watching half of one of the videos that Ernest put up, the Saints Revenge. He put it up, and I was like, man. I mean, he's posting these things with little comments like, "Atheists, we need to wake up." I'm like, yeah, that much I agree with you on too. We're atheists, and we both think that atheists need to wake up. Got you there too, but some crazy bullshit. Seriously. And and as far as Agenda 21, um, I heard a lot about it when I went in as a delegate for the Republican Party. A lot of my fellow delegates were actually libertarians in the Republican Party, and they spoke about Agenda 21 as though it were something about taking away property rights because they saw some cartoon on YouTube um, that was stoking their paranoia. I actually like Agenda 21. Um, it kind of reads like a playbook for what the EPA in America maybe should be, but the reason why I like it, strap yourselves in for this one, ladies and gentlemen. The reason why I like it is because I fucking read it. And I consider it to be a toothless, vague, um, just panacea to make people think that they achieved something by saying, yes, we stand for this. Basically, um, there's many different facets to what Agenda 21 covers, but basically, if you are for charities feeding starving children in Africa, then you probably don't have a problem with anything that's actually in Agenda 21. It would take a lot of inference and extrapolation to come up with something that would rob Americans of their property rights by anything that you would find in Agenda 21. It's basically like, let's be more sustainable and clean up the earth. And it's basically like, if whatever planet Captain Planet came from, if that planet had like a planetary constitution, that's what Agenda 21 looks like. It's just touchy feely. Everybody uh, grow your own vegetables in your backyard type stuff with no teeth on it whatsoever, because it comes from the UN, right? It's a UN document. It's not like it's some top secret bullshit thing, you know, like you're never going to be able to read it. I'll put a fucking link in the description box for Agenda 21 if anyone wants to read it. It's on the UN's website. You know, um, but yeah, I think that's the same as a lot of things. You wouldn't have the understanding that the masses have if you just read it. If you read what was being talked about. One of the most popular videos on my channel is actually not me talking. Shocker! It's actually Dave Silverman, who I filmed at a church in my town, telling the church uh, to read their Bibles. And the crowd was half atheist and half Christian in that church. I recognized most of the atheists from my community being in that church. And so it was about half and half. And everyone on both sides of the aisle there cheered when Dave Silverman said, read your Bible. And the Christians there were cheering like, he does not know what he just said. Yeah, we read our Bible, and if he tells all these atheists here that invaded our church today to read their Bible, then they're all going to become Christians, you know. And the sad thing is, a lot of those um, Christians probably had not read their Bible, at least not in a thorough front to back way. I know that there's, from my experience in churches, there's Bible studies that like to skip over certain parts of the Bible. They're like, okay, we're going to go a little bit ahead and jump to this part of the Bible because it has more to do with what we're doing in this church, and then you notice that when you become an atheist, why did we never hear about the other part of the story of Lot? We heard about Sodom and Gomorrah, but like then we just jumped around after that. We didn't hear about the incest part in the cave with his two daughters. What happened there? Why did we not realize that the story of Job was fucked up, like completely fucked up? That's because we didn't spend a lot of time on that, did we? No, we jumped around. Um, but yeah, I think if you just take your own reading of certain things, just read it yourself, you'll find that you don't feel the same way as other people might if they've been whipped up into a frenzy by a YouTube cartoon. And that's the feeling that I got when I read Agenda 21. I was like, this is the great evil? Seriously? Recycling? What the fuck? Recycling is evil. You know, recycling is going to take our property rights away. Oh. So if I'm going to get my something 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 tard badge, I'm going to say the most recent thing that I thought was fixed, or uh, there was more to it. You know, so the most recent moment that I had that I really just I had to believe that that something was rigged or there was some conspiracy about something. It was a UFC fight, and it was between Johnny Hendricks and George St. Pierre. Okay, and for 5 rounds, George St. Pierre, who was an awesome fighter, for 5 rounds he got his ass whooped. Right, but he didn't get knocked out. He didn't get submitted. It went to the judges' scorecards, and the judges picked wrong. You know, every armchair next day quarterback for the MMA, which doesn't make sense because they don't have quarterbacks. The people at home, all of the commentators, um, like even the ones that were there at the scene, they were all later quoted as saying that Hendricks won that fight, and those judges were fucking blind. You know, everybody knows who watched it that GSP had his ass handed to him, and afterwards GSP couldn't even really participate well in an interview after that. It was like he had brain damage. He was beaten so badly, and he was awarded the win, and then he summarily decides to quit mixed martial arts. Um, says that he needs a break, which pretty much um, keeps a Hendricks GSP 2 matchup, you know, the rubber match, the rematch, it keeps it from happening. Maybe it's because he didn't want to get his face busted up like it did in that fight. He just didn't want that to happen again. Maybe. Anyways, um, that wasn't the only fight ever that seemed like it was just given to the wrong person when the judges gave in their scorecards. It seems like um, every so often one of those happens. Just like the guy who says that the NFL is rigged. Sometimes, like the scoring of the judges is so off that you have to think that it's rigged. It's especially rigged in favor of the champion, the incumbent champion, um, with some sort of notion like if you don't knock out or submit the champion, you can't beat him. Just going 5 rounds with him and looking like you punched him more and kicked him more, you know, that might win other fights. But when you're up against the champion, there's a different standard, and to to be the champion, you have to beat him decisively. And if it goes to the judge's scorecard, then you don't get as many points as you normally would. That's what it seems like there is, as far as a conspiracy in the UFC, at least. Um, but uh, the worst example to me um, of somebody getting robbed in an MMA fight was not Hendricks versus GSP. That was just the latest. I have had these thoughts since Matt Hamill versus Michael Bisping, and I felt like Bisping got the win in that fight because they were in his home country. And that sucked. And I thought, you know, in retrospect, a year later and then 2 years later, um, this really affected Matt Hamill's career. To have a fight where he clearly won be awarded to the other guy, um, it basically put him on a completely different career path where he could have been a contender, you know. And yeah, I was rooting for him like everyone else because he was the deaf guy who, he competed in amateur sports representing America. Yes, I got sucked in by that part of the story too, but it wasn't that was biasing me. He beat Michael Bisping's ass, right? It was so obvious, and then when Michael Bisping was awarded the win, the boos from the crowd told me how obvious it was, and how much, they saw the same thing I did. The wrong person had his hand raised. And if like an entire arena erupts in booing, and chants things that would say that they think it was fixed, then I'm not alone here. There's some bad judgments that have come down. So I don't think it's really a vast conspiracy that involves a a referee um, company that has at least like 500 refs under it, where all 500 would have to keep a secret. At most, each event that I've seen would have had to have 3 people be in on it, and to me, it's a lot more believable as far as like a conspiracy if it's just 3 people being in on it. But if the NFL's refs were in on some big conspiracy, then that's a lot of people keeping the secret. And I have to think that one of them would just, you know, come out and just out the whole thing and write a book about it, you know. And for the record, if you're an MMA fan, I don't think that Herb Dean is fixing fights for anyone. I just think he's a dumbass sometimes. Links in the description box to some of the weirdness that I've been encountering, so you guys can follow along with why I feel this way. And talk to you later.